Continuing on with part 2, this episode we are going to create this little tiny animation that has these 3 circles coming in with a staggered effect, and when we click on the red circle it expands, and when we click on it again it does shrink. Cool. So let's go ahead and jump into the code and create this animation. Now the first thing that we need to do is go ahead and create that UI design of those 3 circles. So let's go ahead and erase everything in here. We can erase all the refs and also the import logo. Save that and it should pretty much be empty here. Now what we need to first do is create a div for our circle containers. So let's go ahead and do class name circle-container, and within the circle container what we could list is every single circle. So create a div with a class name of circle, and we could just copy and paste this 2 more times. Great. Now let's go ahead and get into the .css, and we could erase the app link, the P, and the app logo. Go ahead and save that and create a circle class with a width of 75 pixels, a height of 75 pixels. Border radius should be set to 100% so that it could be completely round, and the background color FDC F51, and let's go ahead and save that. We also need to add a margin so that we could have some space between every single circle. I think that looks pretty good. So we also want to differentiate the second circle and the third circle. So what we could do is .circle.red and .circle.blue, and then in here we could just change the background color. So the background color for our red circle is going to be a hex code of FD515. And the blue one, let's go ahead and write background color with a hex code of 51A0 FD. Go ahead and save that and jump back into the app.js and attach a red class and a blue class. Cool, that looks great. And then let's go ahead and remove the background color in app.css. Now the first thing that we need to do is create a reference to each element that we have. So let circle equal use ref and set that to null. And we also want to do that for our circle red and circle blue. And then in our actuals, whoa, what happened? Okay, I have no idea what that was. In our circle red and circle blue and just the original one, go ahead and attach a ref L function and set this to circle is equivalent to L, which is just assigning this element to its variable name, but we need to change the red and the blue. Now if we use effect and just attach an empty array for the dependency, we can go ahead and console log all of our variables up here to see if they're actually being pulled. So circle and then circle blue, or circle red and circle blue. Go ahead and save that and open up the console log to see if they're actually being logged. And we can see that it's actually working with circle and circle red and circle blue. Sweet, go ahead and close that. Now we can erase this log, and the first thing that we need to do is just create the animation for this yellow item, and then we'll just do the same and add a delay for red and blue. And to do that we are using TweenMax. Typically, since this is just we're in just development mode, we are going to go ahead and use TweenMax, but a lot of the times when you go to production I would recommend using TweenLite, since it is a stripped down version of TweenMax and it's not as large of a file size. Especially when serving it up on the web, you want to make sure that your file sizes are as small as possible. So in this case, go ahead and write tweenmax.from. We did use to in the previous video, but in this case, since we already have our final result or our final screen that we want to see, we'll use from to define the beginning values. So it's going to be set to an opacity of 0 and move to the right. And whatever animation happens will always come back to this one. The final state does not need to be defined. So typically with from, it's a lot easier to use and it makes more sense. So go ahead and list out the target, then the duration, and then the options that we want to lay out. So in this case, we're just going to set the opacity to 0 and X of 40, which will move the yellow circles 40 pixels. And finally, the ease should be a power of 3, like we've always used, and with an ease out. Go ahead and save that, and we can see every time we refresh, it kind of just has this little smooth fade in. What we could then do is copy and paste this 2 other times, change the targets to red and blue, and then just simply attach a delay of 0.2 seconds and another delay for our blue to a 0.4. That way the interval of each circle has a 0.2 increase. So if we save that, we can see now we have that nice staggering effect that works fairly well. Now there's 2 things I do want to note. First being that every single time we hard refresh is just Control-Shift-R. You could see that the DOM is loading and then the animation's coming in right after, and it creates a sort of little glitchy looking UI, which is not really pretty. The way we could fix that is if we integrate CSS with this tweenmax. There are other ways to fix it, but in this case I'll just use tweenmax for an example. So what we could do is set the class name of app, which is our parent. We could set this to a visibility of hidden in CSS, and then in our use effect, which means every single DOM element's loaded, we can then set the visibility of this app to visible, and that way we won't really get this little flash. So if we go ahead and go into CSS, we could do visibility hidden, save this. This will go ahead and just hide everything, and then in our use effect, we could write tweenmax.to, and we need to use a useRef for our app. So we'll go ahead and create one. Let app use ref null, and then in the class name of app, we could write ref l app is equal to l. And then in the tweenmax.to, we could call app with a duration of 0. And then in GSAP, you do have an option to write CSS code, so we could just do that by writing CSS here and adding visibility to visible and saving that. Now every time we refresh, we could see that there isn't that flash anymore, which is a lot smoother. The second thing I did want to note was the fact that this was kind of redundant and there's an easier way to write it. So an easier way to write this is to write tweenmax.staggerFrom, and what this does is it allows us to specify as many items as we want. So we could just write an array of our elements, so circle, circle red, and circle blue will all come in here, and whatever animation we describe will automatically be attached to every single item here. So we want the exact same animation to occur, so we could just copy the first one, and we also get another option of a delay. So if we put comma and add a 0.2 delay, this will attach a 0.2 delay for every single item. If we save this, we'll end up with the same animation. So if we refresh, didn't seem to work. I think, oh, we're missing the duration, sorry. So if we add a 0.8 duration and save this, we get that nice smooth effect that we had previously, just without writing three lines of code of really the same thing. Now the last thing that we did have was the fact that you could hit that red circle and make it expand, and hit it again and make it shrink. This does use state, so let's go ahead and import that. And the reason we're using useState is that we need to keep track if our red circle has been expanded, and if it's been expanded, we want to just kind of keep a state letting us know that if it's expanded or if it's shrunk. And we'll also use a ternary operator with an on-click event handler on this little red circle. So the first thing we could do is write an on-click, and we can call this handle expand, which just means that we're expanding our item. So expand, and then we can just write a function that will handle expand. And what this will do is just expand our red circle with tweenmax. So tweenmax.to circle red, and we can just do a duration of 0.8, and then our options are going to be a width of 200, a height of 200, and then the ease would be the same that we had previously, power3.easeOut. Now what this means is when we click the handle expand function, what will happen is it will make our circle red a width of 200 and a height of 200. So let's go ahead and save that, and if we click on red, what should happen is it should expand like so. Now if we click on it again, nothing will happen. That's because we haven't written another function to shrink it, and we could do that by just copying and pasting this and just changing the 200 back to 75. And what we could, we had an error because we didn't change the name. We could change the name to this to handle shrink. Go ahead and save that. Nothing will still happen when we click on the red circle again, because we're only clicking the handle expand function. Now in this case, what we do need to actually use now is that use state. So what we could write is a const with an array of, in this case we'll just call it use state. You could call it circle state or toggled circle or expanded circle, but I'm just gonna use state for now. Since it's the only state we're holding, it shouldn't really matter to us because we're not really gonna get confused. But you could just write use state, and I'm sorry here, I meant to just say state instead of use state. So state and then set state, we're gonna set it to false first. And when we click on handle expand, we're going to run set state expand. Oh, no, not expand, sorry. Set state and then set this to true. And in our next one, we could just, or the handle shrink, we could just set it back to false. Typically, you could just write another function that will run set state to true, but in this case, it doesn't really matter too much for us. We could just write it in our handle expand, but in a production version, this isn't really the perfect way of writing it, just so you know. So once we have our states settled, what we could do next is a ternary operator, which is an if statement, letting us know that if the state is set to false, we run the handle expand, and if it's true, we run the handle shrink. And to write that, what we could do is set, or no, we could just write state is not true. Oop, can't spell. We want to run the handle expand, else we want to run the handle shrink. Go ahead and save that. And if we click on the red, I double clicked on accident, but if we click on red, it will expand, and if we click on it again, it will shrink. That way that it kind of just goes back and forth, and the state is changing from true to false. You could just console log that and see for yourself. But if we refresh, we have that smooth animation, and then when we click on red, it will expand and then shrink and expand and shrink. That's it for this episode. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe. Look out for part 3 where we'll explore better and more customizable animations. That's gonna do it for me. Have a wonderful day.